Hello everyone, welcome to video 4 of the Van Hemert system book video series. And in this video we're going to take a look at fundamental shape number 4 and we're going to look at exercise number 4. And fundamental shape number 4 is actually a scale. And the name of that scale would be the Phrygian dominant scale. But I never think of it like that. I just think of these 4 fingerings that I have for this scale. So let's just play through the fundamental shapes, all 4 forms, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you should think about these shapes. Basically, it's 4 forms, but it's just the starting note of the scale is a chord tone. So we have, for example, the first form starting on the root of a dominant chord. So if we're thinking about E7, we're starting on the E on the high E string with our first finger. And the shape sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, four. I like to slide from the A to the G sharp, that's also notated. But of course you can do whatever you want, you can also pick every note. Or you could put a pull off somewhere else maybe. Whatever feels most comfortable for you and whatever is part of your style. Okay, let's move on to the second form, which starts, of course, on the second note of the chord, which is the third, so G sharp, right? Because E7 consists of E, starting on E shape, form 1, G sharp, form 2, B, form 3, and D, form 4. So form 2 starting on the third, G sharp, with the first finger on the high E string, 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. So the fingerings I use are just fingerings I got used to, sometimes based on what Stochelo does, sometimes something that I find very comfortable. For instance, for this shape, I like going to wide position right here. But you don't have to do it, you can play a 4-3-1. Whatever you find more comfortable. I prefer to stay in position for the first 3 strings and then jump. Of course, when you practice this, you shouldn't be able to hear that. You should just be able to hear swinging 8th notes. So again, use my metronome system to do that. Now we move on to form 3, starting with the first finger on the 5th of E7, a B. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. Now I got used to using 3 fingers, but I've also played it like this. Both are fine. Also, another option is to stay in position. I didn't write it down because I usually use this fingering where I move down, but you can also, the beginning is the same. And now you slide back like it says in the tab, but then you go back. Which may actually be easier, but just I got used to, because I can continue on to the G sharp on the low E string, so I travel more distance. But there's nothing wrong with staying in position. Okay, form 4, starting with our first finger on the 4th note of the chord, a D, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. Now in practice I usually play this shape until the G sharp. I usually do that, like A, G, G sharp. Of course, it's beneficial to practice the whole shape, and maybe you'll find some other preference, but I'm just telling you what I usually use from this scale. Now, of course, you're going to practice this with the metronome, with my system, with the circle of fifths. And then the next step would be to realize or to figure out how you can go up with a diminished arpeggio. So that's fundamental shape number 2, I think. Yeah, number 2. And go down with this Phrygian dominant scale. So let me give you an example, because there are many examples and it's like a puzzle And you need to figure out what you like. So for instance, if I take shape 1 and I would go down, I can notice that under my first finger is a G sharp, and I can start one of the forms of shape 2 with a G sharp diminished arpeggio. And I can make a loop. Of course, that's only one possibility. What would be another possibility? Stop here and start a diminished shape from the B. What would be another possibility? Let me see. From this F. Right? Okay, let's do another. Let's do the shape form number 3. So from the 5th, I can go down to a G sharp and do a diminished arpeggio. Or from this B. Or I could maybe from this F. And once you start doing that with all the scale patterns, connecting to diminished arpeggios, you can make very long phrases that travel from scale pattern to scale pattern and from diminished arpeggio to diminished arpeggio. So for example, let's say we start with form 2, so from the 3rd. Now I want to go up with diminished from this B. Now I am actually in form 3 from the 5th, so I continue there. Go up with diminished. Now I'm in form 4. Now I'm in form 1. And it's your job to actually make these connections and find stuff that you like, also with embellishments. Let me play one example more fluently. Right, so I've become very good at connecting these phrygian dominant scales to diminished arpeggios because I've practiced that a lot. What you can do is you can practice with a metronome, or you could, for example, record a backing track for yourself with one chord. So for in this case E7, right? And then just improvise on E7 using only diminished arpeggios and these phrygian dominant scales and embellishments. And it's just a puzzle you need to solve, and you need to train your reflexes, and you need to train to see where you are at the neck and how you can connect the shapes to each other. Now, it's less difficult than you think because you're always connecting from the low E string or the low A string to a diminished arpeggio, going up to the high E string, going down with a phrygian dominant scale. So there's only 3 strings you have to make the connections, right? It's not all 6 strings, and I never connect them in any other way in practice. It's always on these 3 strings, and you will find that you can start creating these very long flowing lines that work great on songs like Joseph Joseph, which has a very long dominant chord E7, or Limehouse Blues, which has 4 bars C7, 4 bars A7, Sweet Richard Brown, which has, depending on the key you're playing it in, let's say you're playing it in F, so then you have 4 bars of D7, 4 bars of G7, 4 bars of C7, and you can start connecting these phrases, and they will sound like magic. It will sound like you really have a command of jazz language, but by only using these 2 shapes. But it's all about those connections. And another video I made on YouTube is called Gypsy Jazz Loops, and it's basically what I'm demonstrating in that video, right? These connections. But I'm just showing a sample of what is possible. Now that you have these fundamental shapes, you can make your own connections. Okay, so now we're going to exercise number 4, and the exercises become less and less useful to write down because the exercises are basically the same principle as what I was just talking about, connecting these shapes, but you have to find your own connections and own preferences. But let me play exercise 4 for you so you can hear what it sounds like, and you can start there and then build from there. You can build your own exercises, and I will talk about that after I demonstrate exercise 4. So what's happening in this exercise? I just put together shapes almost at random, but I tried to put the Phrygian dominant scale, this shape, on all the dominant chords. So it starts with shape 1. Now, to be honest, I never think about it as shape 1, right? I think about it as a major 7 shape, because if I have to think about numbers, that's just to organize it in the book. But so major 7 shape on A minor, and then a minor 6 shape starting on an F for D minor. Now the Phrygian dominant scale starting on the root of E7. A major 7 shape on A minor, but starting on the low E string. Now switching to a Phrygian dominant scale starting on the 3rd. And now major 7 shape on D minor. Major 7 shape on A minor. And now I'm thinking E7 for the whole bar. So starting with the shape on the 5th of E7, that's B. Minor 6 shape for A minor. And diminished for E7. But I could have chosen completely different starting points for every phrase. So let me improvise a little bit using all the shapes so far. And then you can see that I get a completely different sounding solo. Well, of course, you will still recognize all the shapes, but the starting points will be completely different. And the thing I'm going for is trying to connect the shapes so that I don't have to jump too much with my hand. Here we go. So by practicing these shapes like this, and the way I suggest you do it is just by making up exercises for yourself, like just find connections. Maybe you start just looking at your guitar neck and think of something that you could do. So let's try to make a connection. For instance, let's say I want to connect the E7 to the A minor, right? So I'm thinking, okay, I want to start with a Phrygian dominant scale on the 3rd. Connecting maybe to so I would practice that on the backing track, only that part. So I would practice that going from E7 to A minor in every spot that's possible. So from bar 4 and 5 to bar 6, and from bar 13 and 14 to bar 15, right? And I would maybe write it down, and then I might find another connection. Maybe I want to find a connection from A minor to D minor. So I want to start in the 2nd bar, maybe with minor 6. Hey, and I see, oh, I can connect actually to shape 1. D minor. So the 1st bar would rest. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some embellishments. I'm going to play this connection. I'm going to play the connection that we just thought of for E7 to A minor, right? So we would play this one. Here we go. 1st bar's rest. G7, C. We can make the connection again. So I would build little solos like that, just making connection after connection. And there's no set way to do it. It's just sitting down and see what you can come up with that day and then practice that until you start making those connections on the fly, which will happen sooner than you think. It just won't happen that fluently. And of course, you gotta always pay attention to your timing and your technique, right? So also practice your connections you make with a metronome on beat 2 and 4, beat 1 and 3, just with my metronome system. The next video, we're going to talk about the last fundamental shape, which is a scale pattern that uses the altered sound. We'll see you in that video. Bye.